ran out of love. Every love is bound to maintain it. You got to knock the legs with an don't throw a stone, you don't know. Stop what you say, it's what you do. Don't throw your stone.
Hello and welcome back to track 5 of Out on That Line. This is Geoff with my co-host Alex. This week we'll be talking about The Weeknd's new album After Hours, as well as Taylor Swift's Folklore. Alex, how are you this week?
I'm doing great because this is a big album week for us. We got some big deal albums.
These are big deal albums, both very recent, both by very well-known artists, so looking forward to that. But first, I do have to mention something. Alex, do you know what happened on this date in 1949?
Feels like somebody's got a birthday. But who is it, Jeff?
A Bruce Springsteen,
Oh.
the best to ever do it, the boss. Yes, indeed, the man who has graced us with such classics as Thunder Road, Born to Run, Jungle Land, all those from the same album. We could go on and on, but he's the best. Happy birthday, Bruce. We're going to get started right off the bat here this week with The Weeknd After Hours. So I'm going to go ahead and start and say overall, I thought this was a pretty damn good album.
Yeah.
I like this one.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you
Yeah,
the impetus behind the pick for this. It was twofold.
Mm-hmm.
One reason was you hit me up and were like, hey, we're going to do it. We're going to do the new Taylor Swift that came out. And that was a surprise album. So I wanted something that was big and would contrast with that. And this album by The Weeknd was hotly anticipated, and he dropped a bunch of little nuggets here and there about what people could expect. And then he went dark for 5 months, and then he just came out and started like releasing all these different snippets and samples. And I believe he released one of the songs like in entirety on Instagram or something. So I kind of wanted to get two albums that approach that from different ways. So you like this? You enjoyed this?
Yes, and I will confess that I haven't listened to tons of The Weeknd, certainly not as much as other bands that I've listened to, but I've listened to quite a bit of The Weeknd. So I kind of had an expectation of going in here of what he's about and everything like that, and I feel like he met and exceeded everything he's done before on this album. And I'd been listening to him back kind of in the days when he did The Birds. I don't know if you remember that couple of songs. Those were just really strange, weird R&B. Just you could tell this guy was just kind of coming from a different place, as a lot of other people, at least musically. So I was excited when you mentioned this album because I knew it had come out, but I hadn't heard anything except for Blinding Lights on this album, which was I think the second single he released. But starting right off, it's such a synth heavy album, especially at the beginning and end. And it's just so, it feels like very 80s. It feels I get very much like, kind of the later half of the movie Scarface.
I have that written down in my
very
notes.
Synth heavy songs. It had that really kind of low end synth sound, and it just was foreboding, and you kind of get, he's always been very honest about his feelings and everything. It didn't change on this album whatsoever. Right off the bat, he's constantly, the thing I like about him is he takes the blame on himself. He understands how much he is part of the issue of the things that have gone wrong in his life. So he never blows any smoke up your ass about that kind of thing, so that's always appreciated. And the way he delivers things is just a little bit different. He comes from a lot of different influences, everything, almost sort of like Thundercat does. Thundercat does it instrumentally. I think The Weeknd does it really kind of lyrically and more melodically. But I really, overall just enjoyed it. So had you been familiar with him previous to this?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Starboy came out, that was the real, because I had heard I Can't Feel My Face prior to that. But other than that, not too much. And then Starboy came out actually while I was still living in Texas. And this kind of dovetails with one of my points here, but not to be crass, but this is like, but The Weeknd makes like nookie jams. Like this is, you find yourself a nice, person to be with. You put on Starboy and it's all over but the crying. So, I mean,
if you're going to quote somebody, Russ Branneman from Silicon Valley, like The Weeknd fucks. for sure. You know,
Oh yeah. And he loves cocaine.
Loves it. Loves
Can't
it.
get enough.
I mean, he's got. I think every album has had at least one song, strictly either titled to do with cocaine or just is strictly about cocaine. I mean, Can't Feel My Face obviously is about cocaine. I think there was a debate for a bit whether that was about ecstasy or cocaine, and I was like, does it matter?
Yeah. I mean, it's,
which,
6 of one, half
who
dozen of
cares?
the other at this point.
Yeah, exactly. This album has Snow Child, so obviously correlations between snow and cocaine. Just really, really clever and subversive with that one.
Yeah, it's very subtle and tasteful. I don't think anyone knew what he meant.
Yeah. And then, so he starts out in the first song, Alone Again. And you get immediately same kind of Weeknd stuff, it's about losing himself. He overdoses in the song. He's asking a lover for help. He's like, help me fix myself, basically, because he's like, I'm clearly not capable of doing it myself, So in order to like get over that stuff, he's at a strip club, and some clever lines, I throw 2,000 ones in the sky, and then he goes, count it up, it's all for you. Count it up, it's all for you. And who can't relate to that?
Oh, sure. Except for me, it's usually at
Yeah.
an Entenmann's bakery, but it's all for you, Gladys. Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. Like, another point I wanted to make about this album is it's not technically a concept album. And I think I've said this about other albums we've listened to before, but it's conceptual. Like, it really does a great job of writing the same themes. And I'll be honest, when it started, the first like 3 songs, I'm like, these are a little indistinct for me. Like, he's kind of got to throw me off here with something. And then when we eventually hit Snow Child, I was like, oh fuck, okay, you got what I asked for.
Yeah.
But it's it's just really interesting what a like huge evolution this is for his sound too. Like, he's always had that, very like produced pop driven style, but he just got so into the synth wave on this, and I'm a huge fan, so it was just, I'm in heaven.
Yeah, and I think this, along with like Caroline Rose, for our loyal listeners, they'll remember talking about that one. And if you've listened to that one, you hear that same, I think you hear Alex and I both are excited about that kind of arrangement. And the Weeknd just has it throughout this album. I mean, there's a few songs that, he gets into pretty much some straight, kind of rap, hip hop, like kind of really traditional R&B kind of stuff. But he's a very versatile person, as far as music goes. I don't know about how much, and I could probably look into this a little better, because he does work with a lot of producers and everything. So I don't know how much he does like musically, or is he just the kind of conceptual lyrics, and also the, vocals. I'd have to kind of look into that. But it seems like it's his vision, whether he does the back end stuff to produce it, or if he just knows where it needs to go and gets other people to do that. It's just, you can tell always kind of where he's trying to go. He's like, I have this stuff that I am really sad about and stuff I'm really angry about. I'm going to get it out of me. And that's what this is for. And it's just, it's really kind of cathartic to listen to. And the way he puts it together, if you don't feel like paying attention to the lyrics, you've just got some good dance music.
Oh yeah.
And then when you read, if you want, you can take it to that next level and really dig into the lyrics and understand the song. And he's got layers to what he does, and it's really kind of a pleasure to listen to every time he comes out with something new.
And when you dig into those lyrics and you listen to the album in order, which obviously every time I listen to a new one on here, I go straight through in order, because I think song placement is such a sneaky, underrated aspect of a really cohesive album. And sometimes you hear people say like, okay, well, they appear on the album in the order they were recorded, or, this last song was the first one I wrote, and that kind of stuff. But it's just, there's such a clever structure to the way the Weeknd stacked up all the songs, because it does, I can't even say indirectly or not, because he had to have intended this. I mean, it takes you from this like really interesting frenetic, or I can't even say the opening's frenetic. It's actually the complete opposite. It's very subdued. It's very pulsating, but then it like gradually becomes more frenetic and erratic. and then there's this giant peak and then a huge crash, and then he kind of experiences the ego death throughout the fucking course of the album. There's a lot of these themes of like loss of identity, like you get what you want, but at the price of your identity, and therefore at the price of your happiness. Like, how can you enjoy all of this? So like that kind of monkey's paw, you know, careful what you wish for aspect to it permeates this whole thing. And it's just like really interesting how you mentioned Scarface too. And I had the exact same thought where the themes of that movie are, you know, power for power's sake, here for a good time, not a long time. The world is yours, but you're not going to hang on to it forever. And that's kind of what's going on through this, because it's all set in L.A. and Los Angeles and the party scene that is literally killing him, but he doesn't really know who he would be without it. He would be, you know, he's numb with it. He's numb without it. So it's really interesting and introspective. And then it's just like fucking great music you can dance to.
Yeah, I think he's very much, you know, I'd rather burn out than fade away. You know, is that kind of mentality. You know, I really liked the use of "The World Is Yours" that you pulled from Scarface there. I mean, that was beautiful.
Hey.
That was a nice little pull there. And I just want to point out that people should notice that clever wordplay. That's why Alex is here.
That's why they pay me the Dogecoin, baby.
Yeah, and he it's just he's so good at making you feel that. Like I've gone to Vegas, you know, I've been to LA, but not the same Vegas in LA that he goes to, you know? Yeah. So it's like, it's nice to hear, you know, I don't feel like I'm missing anything when he's telling these stories, because he's so good at how he presents it, that he goes based on the feelings, you know, instead of the setting. So it's much more relatable, because like I might not go to strip clubs and go to Vegas and do a bunch of cocaine, but I certainly know what sad feels like, you know, so he's very good at just making it relatable for you. And like, I was kind of like you with the first few songs on the album, where I was like, where's he going with this? But once you listen through, you realize that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. You know, there's the beginning where he's like, oh shit, you know, I've done it again. It's kind of like you're coming in, what's that, in media res or something, where it's like in the middle of things, you know, where he's like on one of his low points right now, you know, where he's overdosed, he's asking, you know, whoever he's with at the time, and you see a theme where it's like, you know, he kind of burns through people because he's, you know, a pretty toxic person himself. You know, he's really down, he's overdosed, he's asking for help, you know, he's trying to say like, I need to fix myself. And then he starts to get better, and he realizes, oh, I can probably go back to partying and be fine. You know, I'll know how to do it this time. And so the middle of the album is all those songs where it's like, you know, Blinding Lights is in there, you know, and it's all these songs where it's like, he's partying, he's going hard again. He's like, I don't like this, but if I get sober, then I'm going to have to go back to where I was before. And it's like, I don't want to go back there, you know, and then the end of the album is him going back there again. So it's almost like you could play this album in a loop and it would never really break the story. You know, you could just keep going around and around again, because that seems to be what he's doing, or at least what he's singing about.
That's the sense I got by the end, is exactly that, is it's just, it starts all over again. It's like the Dark Tower, you know, for anyone who read that book. I probably know one, but oh well.
Didn't they make that into a movie?
They did. I didn't see it. I'm sure it was terrible.
Was it with like Idris Elba?
And Matthew McConaughey, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's a guaranteed hit movie.
That movie's too laid back.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know if I'd want to see that one. I don't know how those two would like act together.
Again, it's too laid back. I just see them having like who can seem more stoned off and like be more charming.
Yeah. Or Idris Elba can just stand everywhere with his hands behind, like clasped behind his back, like Stringer Bell.
Yeah,
all the time.
Oh, Stringer.
Just wear polos. I do want to make sure that, you know, I'm kind of skipping through a few songs here, but I do want to make sure I come to a screeching halt at Snow Child. I heard you mention this one before. I had the star next to this one because this was, I feel like, the Weeknd when he was letting it rip, you know, and this is where he's like, let me go back, where he's letting it rip. So he's letting you know everything he's got in his holster, everything he's got in his quiver, you know? And it's just such a good song.
Because all the songs before it were pretty lyrically simple and were pretty like musically restrained. And it was a lot of like repeated phrases. I know this is not verbatim, but you know, like, I don't ever want to fall in love again. I don't ever want to fall in love again. Or like later, actually a better example would be that interlude that comes later in the album, Repeat After Me, where he's just repeating these different phrases. So a lot of the songs were like that. They were like repetitive and they had a cool sound, but I was like, I don't really like know what he's going for yet. I don't get a sense of like, he kind of promised something in the opening song that isn't necessarily being followed up, or it's being repeated a lot. So like, where's this going to go? And then, my first note is, holy fuck, under Snow Child.
Yep.
Because he just gets, you know right then, you're like, this is some deeply personal shit that is coming out right now.
Yeah, and some of the wordplay, I mean, he's always been good at it, you know what I mean? Some of the wordplay that he does, like, got me moving dirty like I'm Swayze. You know, he talks about what's in the first verse, walking in the snow before I ever made my wrist freeze.
Yep.
You know, so he's talking about like wrist freeze, you know, obviously like getting a huge watch, you know, like with a bunch of diamonds on it, and like walking in the snow, obviously talking about cocaine. You know, I was singing notes while it's a certain word I'm not going to say on the podcast, so I'm just going to replace that one with gentleman. I was singing notes while my gentleman played with 6 keys. You know, it's just like he goes from he's talking about all these emotions, all these like really heavy, bad things he's going through. And then all of a sudden he's like, I'm back to partying. Like, let's boogie.
Well, and it's very like, he delivers everything very combatively too. So he's being really clever, but he's talking about something that clearly bothers him. I would also like to give a shout out to an amazing little play that he's gotten here. Futuristic sex gave her Philip K. Dick. That is such a nerdy fucking... That is second only to my other favorite, which is Lil Wayne, bitch, real G's move in silence like lasagna.
Yep.
Like, fucking... they're just... rappers are just English lit nerds, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say lyrically, they're, you know, probably... I would say there's probably more rappers that are better lyricists than, you know, other genres could put together. You know, it's just because it's like you have to, because it's, you know, not like he obviously is a great singer as well, but when he decides to rap, you know, he can do it in a very sing-songy way, but he's obviously a very good rapper as well, you know. So I think there's a lot, maybe more recently, where, you know, there's a lot more variation in how, you know, rappers and hip hop artists are presenting the songs. That there's a lot more mixture, I think, between R&B and rap now, with the same people doing it, than there used to be. At least, you know, I used to listen to like DMX and Jay-Z and stuff. Neither of them were really singing in any of their songs. So it's like, somebody like The Weeknd is a very different kind of beast for me. So it's, you know, it's great to hear, because I get all of these other influences along with a great rapper. He's a great R&B artist. He's a great electronic artist, you know, so he's got all of these things that he's so good at. And I think he balances it so well on this album. And just this middle part of the album, it really just, it's almost turns into like a hip hop album, you know.
I mean, it's pretty fucking deadly. I've got straight stars for the next like 7 songs. So yeah, it's real fat in the middle of this album, and I don't hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that one, I mean, it's just very much that kind of like, if people are familiar with the Joe Walsh song "Life's Been Good," you know, he's like, I've got a mansion, they tell me it's nice, ain't never been there, I forget the price. Like that kind of sentiment that he does on the bridge. You know, 20 mil mansion, never lived in it, 0 edge pool, never dipped in it. I mean, just, he's so good at that kind of stuff, where it's like, he's just tossing off these lines that I would kill, like, you know, when I was writing music, that I would kill to have come up with, you know, that level of stuff. And he just seems like he's tossing it off. He's like, oh, I'll stick this one in the bridge at the end of the song.
Yeah, he wrote it on a fucking McDonald's napkin or something. Like, that's just how like easy it was for him.
He's just very, very talented man. Escape from LA. I mean, this one kind of struck me as like very similar to his older stuff. So the kind of like up to Starboy and like previous, whereas he just kind of a lot more stark R&B that he was doing, like the Byrds, you know, and songs like that. You know, he certainly wasn't doing a whole lot of stuff like Blinding Lights or anything back then. This kind of brought me back to that time in his career. But I mean, one set of lines here that I just have to absolutely give a shout out to. Keanu Reeves, again, I'm going to replace a word here. Keanu Reeves, the way a gentleman speed. Diamond cross hanging off me. I'm fighting for my soul, Constantine. Like, just talk. So Keanu Reeves talks about the movie Speed, and then he says, Diamond Cross hanging off me, and then he talks about Keanu Reeves' movie Constantine. So like a little like a triplet. I don't know if you'd call it that, but just like 3 lines and just about Keanu Reeves movies.
Yeah.
Like not even great ones.
And he just makes his point immediately. Like it's not just like, what the fuck was this garbage? He just finds a way to make it interesting.
Yeah. And I think he's kind of equating LA with, he's kind of like personifying LA in this a little bit. I don't know what the actual technical term of that is when you give like human qualities to like an object or something.
I mean, anthropomorphizing, yeah. Anthropomorphic horse is basically a horse with human characteristics.
Okay,
I have nightmares about them.
But it seems like he's kind of like equating LA and like a person, you know, a lover of his that he's having, you know, obviously problems with. I don't think he's sung about a healthy relationship ever in his career. No,
not unless you count his relationship with cocaine, and even that, you know, he
it's touch and
doesn't
go,
always
you know?
speak of it glowingly. Yes,
yeah, he talks about overdosing in the first song on this album, so I feel like it probably isn't going that great with that. But moving on to Heartless, that beat. So this producer Metro Boomin does another song on this album. He does, which one is it? Faith, actually the next song. So it goes 1-2 punch with this producer Metro Boomin, and these 2 songs back to back are just so good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually have them bracketed together too, because they're, you know, themes that carry over.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a pretty standard, particularly Heartless, seems like a pretty standard hip hop song, kind of bragging about excess and reveling in it. But the fun twist for me is I think that's all bullshit. I think that's all a front. I think he's singing about being heartless. But if you look at Escape from LA and Snow Child and anything that came before it in this album, we know for a fact he's the opposite of heartless. He's like gets wounded very deep. This is why he's so deep into drugs and promiscuity and everything, is because he feels emotions in stereo. So I think this is more of him putting up a front in this song and trying to convince him, like, fuck it, I have to be heartless if I'm going to survive. And if I'm going to actually enjoy any of this shit, I can't have a conscience. I can't really be thinking about all of these things that are bringing me down. So I think that's a pretty fucking cool thing to do with that song, which is otherwise, like, again, a pretty typical celebration of the excesses that fame and fortune are going to give you.
Yeah, and it kind of, I pictured him almost when he did this song and Faith, the following song to this one, that he was like doing a bunch of cocaine, pacing around and like saying all this stuff, like getting himself like hyped up, like pounding his chest, like he's like, I'm gonna, you know, I'm back, baby, you know, I'm gonna do this, you know. And it's just, you know, everybody I'm sure has met people, hopefully not too many people, that, you know, really are, you know, tends to be men that are just really hyper masculine, just like to hide the fact, you know, they're like, if I don't let anybody in, I'm never going to get hurt. You know what I mean? So I think it's that same sentiment here where it's like, you know, the people that act like this, you know, I think are the ones that hurt the most, you know, because they feel everything so deeply and they don't know how to process it, you know. So I think that's when he turns to the drugs and the loose women and all these, you know, and all these things, you know, that he uses to cover up how he's really feeling inside. And it's just, I don't know, but it's still so fun to listen to. You know, it's like you're just bopping along to this person's demise, basically.
Yeah.
It's almost a little weird. Yeah.
But I think it functions, I mean, appropriately enough as a tribute to the boss. I think it functions on the same level as something like the song Born in the USA, where you hear it and dummies are like, my God, that's the swell of patriotism in my chest is unrivaled. This is an amazing pro-America song. Like that,
yeah.
Don't really bother to read into the subtext of anything. So I don't even think The Weeknd necessarily structured it to be like, hey, you're an asshole if you just have fun to my music. I think it's there to reward the people who give a shit and see him as more than just a person putting out a product, which contributes to the kind of alienation that I think he feels in Heartless and Faith, which is just you're another fucking commodity and people rely on you for entertainment. People rely on you to get their fucking medical bills paid. And it just never seems like you have any space for yourself. And that's contributing to this loss of a sense of identity. And you're just kind of like pissed off at the world, but not really going to let on. Like this could have been far angrier. And instead he just took like a super chill route with it.
Yeah. And I think he doesn't, certainly the way he's so like honest in his songs about, you know, the shitty things that he's done. You know, I think it's very much like he understands, he's not gonna put lyrics like that over catchy danceable beats and not expect people to enjoy that part of it. So that's like what I was saying before, where it's like, if you really want to dig in, you'll hear the lyrics and be like, shit, this guy had some issues. If you don't feel like doing that, the songs are going to sound really upbeat and like, oh, this is a great little almost instrumental album, the way that it's put together. But and I think you were touching on, his loss of identity. I think he did say specifically that in interviews that he's done. So, I mean, that's exactly what he's trying to get across. So that shows how good he is that you picked up on that, immediately. And then we can get into Blinding Lights. I mean, this is probably the one that people are going to know the most from this album. And this is a jam on toast, my friend.
God damn. It's the fucking crown jewel.
Yeah, this one is like the absolute peak, where it's just dripping in like 80s synth excess. It's just beautiful. I mean, the way it starts off slow and you're like, this is a little weird kind of interlude type thing. And then all of a sudden you hear that beat and that synth line start to pick up. And then all of a sudden you're just boom, right in it.
What is that? Da 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 da. What does that remind you of? I have a very specific song in mind, so you're forgiven if you don't.
I'm not sure I know.
It's Rod Stewart, Young Turks.
Oh, you're right.
Does it kind of remind you
I think because obviously, yeah, I guess, yeah, because it's not really, it's not, I wouldn't have thought of that because the sounds of them are not the same.
Yeah.
But like the melody, yeah, it does remind me that. You are correct.
It's interesting.
That's absolutely right.
I think between that and God, what song was it? Too Late or Hardest to Love. It was one of those where he I hope you don't mind, he does the little like Elton John tribute flip in there.
Yep.
And then there's another one. I took copious notes this week. There's another song.
I got a lot of like D'Angelo with him too.
Yeah.
Like when he really gets into the R&B stuff, like the way he just kind of really gets into a falsetto.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's got a really strong one. It really kind of gave me that sort of that era, like the D'Angelo, maybe like Marvin Gaye, that kind of really soulful singing.
Yeah, that like that real crooner sound that he gets into.
Oh yeah.
Sexy.
Yeah, he wears his influences like pretty much on his sleeve, but you would never feel like he's kind of ripping it off.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that.
He's very, very good. Yeah, Blinding Lights is absolute jam. If you haven't heard, I'm sure you've heard it. If you listen to the radio at all in the last probably 6 months, you've probably heard this song. Going from there, it's kind of I look at that one as kind of like the peak. Like that's where he's just like still functional, but now we're going to start spinning back out of control.
Yeah, I mean,
now things are going to get back out of hand.
I took that one as him at a crossroads where I think he's been trying, like story-wise, I think he's been trying to stay sober, but he's incredibly distracted because I mean, obviously, never having been addicted to anything, I can't, speak to this from experience, but I do know that in a lot of like classic depictions in television and literature of the process of getting sober, you have to kill the boredom, because if you aren't like constantly in motion, you aren't constantly doing something, that temptation to relapse is going to be there. So I feel like that song finds him there, and it's this like big upbeat, but it does have this kind of like drive through the night, man on a mission urgency to the sound of the music. Mm-hmm. Like I got to find an all night bowling alley or something. But I think in this case, what he's distracted by is this woman who is also inherently tied to his bad behaviors. So he's at a point where he could just tip the fuck over back into bad habits. Spoiler alert, I don't know if you guys think he gets sober for the rest of the album, but I hate to disappoint anyone.
Oh, no, really?
Sorry.
Yeah, he definitely does not get sober for the rest of the album. And this is where I kind of realized, I was like, oh, this is just a cycle for him. I don't know whether this takes place over like a couple months at a time or if this is like a few years for him. But it seems like there's an awareness to the position that he's in. Like none of it seems to surprise him. Like he's never like, oh, I can't believe I feel this way. It's just like, well, here I am again. Mm-hmm. It just seems like he knows exactly what this is and what he's going to do next. And the bad part is that he can't really do anything about what he does next because he gives into his vices almost like almost 100% of the time. You know, he might stay sober for a bit, but it's like, I feel like a lot of people try to touch that stove again. You know, a lot of people will relapse a bunch of times thinking that they can handle it this time. You know, maybe it was just the things in their life that was causing them to want to do that all the time. Like, this time will be different. They'll know when to stop. And I feel like that's just what we see on the album here, and we've seen in movies, TV, books, you know, probably, unfortunately, probably for some folks in your own lives. You know, it's just, that's how it goes. And that's what he's going to be doing over the next few songs. So, you know, in Your Eyes, that's kind of that song kind of told me that he's like resigning himself back to being just kind of a piece of garbage again. You know, he's realizing that he's not going to do it on this cycle. He's not going to break it. You know, he knows he's been cheated on, but he's like, I don't really want to deal with it. So I'm just not going to say anything about it. Don't rub it in my face. You know, let's pretend it's not happening so we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, and it definitely, like, it struck me as him deciding not to have a breakthrough. That's very much what it feels like, is that maybe between Blinding Lights and In Your Eyes, there was enough introspection that you believe for a second, again, that mystery of where's he going to tip, and then In Your Eyes throughout the course of it, he tips back into Vice. And the I don't want to say it's hilarious because it's not like laugh out loud, but it's just like a great quirk and a great artistic twist, is that this song is so fucking upbeat. It's got a horn section that reminds me of Steve Winwood, Higher Love. It's got same kind of horn section. When the fucking saxophone kicks in, it's like this really ballsy, sexy song. But then you listen to the stuff he's singing about, and you're like, I don't think he's having a good time.
No, he's having an actively bad time.
Yeah.
I would say actively bad time. I would say if I was ever in like these kind of situations that he was in, like overdosing in the first song, now his partner has cheated on him, and he's like, well, you know, I guess it's not as bad as some of the things I've done, so I'll let it go. He goes, you know, in your eyes you lie, but I don't let it define you. You know, it's like just such a, like, I'm going to let you, you know, basically abuse me, you know, because I just don't feel like having upheaval in that part of my life as well. You know, it's just like everything else has gone wrong for him. So it's like, well, maybe if I just hold on to this, you know, and make sure I do everything I can to make sure this goes well or keeps going, then I'll be fine. But he doesn't think about the fact that it's probably better if he just rips this Band-Aid off too.
Right.
You know, it's just, it never seems like you said, he's never willing to really take that full breakthrough. He's always kind of leaving himself an out to go back to his old life, you know, and it's just like every song you're kind of disappointed, but he's so good at writing music, and especially with this kind of topic, that you're like, well, you know, if you're going to keep writing songs about it like this, then I guess keep doing what you're doing, I suppose.
Yeah, you're sublimating it in some way.
Yeah. And then we go Save Your Tears, which I thought, you know, was a really good one. Again, same exact subject matter as everything else on the album, but still just didn't seem to get old at all. You know, verse 3 on this one especially, I think was a really, really strong one. You know, yeah, I broke your heart like someone did to mine, and now you won't love me for a second time. You know, he's begging them to take him back, you know, and it's just like these very, you know, he's very good at doing wordplay, but then he'll also be able to just lay out very obvious lyric like that. Like there's nothing hidden there. It's just like he's got a broken heart. He's asking somebody to help him fix it. And it's just very, very human emotions. You know, if you haven't been in that exact situation, maybe you felt like he has at some time. You know, he's very good at bringing you in like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think if I'm being totally honest, this was a little... Save Your Tears it's a good song, but it was kind of like thematically a little lull for me, a little holdover until we got to Repeat After Me, which I thought was really interesting in the context of looking at this album, the peaks and pits and you know, beginning, middle, end, 3-act structure kind of thing. It's just like such a strange, him trying to hypnotize a lost love into coming back to him, but he has no fucking leg to stand on. And it's like this incredibly toxic and manipulative thing to do. Like, I just kind of picture him after hours in the studio, just unbroken eye contact, trying to get her to like some Scientology moves, to try to get her to like just repeat after me and tell me you fucking love me. And maybe if I hear you say it enough times, I'll believe you mean it. And maybe you actually will. But
yeah,
it's just creepy.
It's creepy. It's toxic. It's just like there's nothing good that's going to come out of that. I feel like the success rate of relationships that start out like that, you probably can't have negative numbers and that sort of thing, but it's zero.
Yeah, I would
probably
have to
at
imagine.
Best, Yeah, I mean, it's just there's no way that's going to work out well. And I think in that, so that one, Repeat After Me, Repeat After Me might be the only dud for me on this album. I mean, I thought it was decent, but I'm like, compared to everything else, just like one, very creepy.
Yeah.
And it's just two, it just seemed like it was kind of, just slow compared to everything else. I don't know. Just didn't really hit me like everything else did, but After Hours certainly did.
It was a weird choice for an interlude. What I did like about it, I think, was some of the incidental stuff. Like, it played a part in the story, but I also kind of love the hazy, like, gospel tones to it, because it had this very, like, haunted album feel to it. And it almost reminded me of, like, what you'd find in the backmasking on a record when there was all this satanic panic about, like, oh, play records backwards and you'll hear some hidden Satanist message. Like, I got the vibes of, like, I shouldn't be listening to this. Like, I played the record backwards and this creepy song is what I heard. I don't like this. I don't care for this. So in that way, it was like a cool piece of the album, but as a song, I don't know how like re-listenable it is outside of the context of the album.
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from with that, because I do like the beat, and it is, I do like the music. So it's actually the guy from Tame Impala, Kevin Parker, that did this song. So they're, really, really famous band at this point. I'm not very familiar with them. I know my fiance's sister is like a massive, massive fan of them, so I could probably get the goods from her on what to get into, which I might do. They did just make the 500 greatest albums ever list, which we could touch on later as well. I don't know if you've looked through it.
I haven't yet. I just know Sgt. Pepper like tumbled down the rankings.
Oh yeah, that would drop down in the 20s, I think. Crazy. I mean, still a great album, but I guess given context of time, maybe doesn't say the same things it used to. Yeah, that one. So that, as far as I know, Tame Impala is pretty decent. My fiance says they're good. So I'll figure out something about them, but it's weird because it's like trying to brainwash the person into loving them. It's just a very strange, so I can see where you're coming from, where it's like a fascinating perspective. But it's just, compared to everything else, like, he was a kind of a shithead throughout the whole album. I didn't really need, this one just, I didn't, I don't know. It was went a little bit too far into that for me to really get into it.
But you get what I'm saying?
But
where
After
Hours,
I
hate to belabor the point, but it's just like,
in
the context, I just see like, imagine if he had a feed bag full of cocaine over his face and he's just being erratic. I can see this if this were a movie of him just like driving to this girl's house. And this sounds awful, but like driving to her house, abducting her, bringing her to the studio, and he's just coked the fucking gills. And in his coked up mind and his desperation to make some kind of sense of all of this, this is what he's decided to do. He's like, okay, well, I'll just brainwash her and that will fix this. So like I look at it as like a classic bad Cocaine Decisions moment in the album. Cocaine Decisions, very fun Frank Zappa song if you haven't heard it.
I could see it that way. I think yeah, I could see it that way, and I might give it another listen and try it with that context, see if I get something different out of it. Yeah. Yeah, I could see it that way. But yeah, so After Hours, one of the last two songs in the album. This one is a long one, great beat. And I think he's asking for some like kind of reconciliation, but doesn't really want to change anything that caused it in the first place, or caused the problems in the first place. So it's like, here we are back again, where he understands, he can see the problem clearly. Like he's got 20/20 vision when it comes to seeing what's wrong with him, but his willingness to do anything about it is what's in question.
Right. Yeah. And I this time around was like, I'm not going to look up too much of what the artists have said or like what other people are interpreting. I just really kind of want it to be undiluted, my own opinions. Because I found that like my own analysis for the 1975 at certain times. Like, I couldn't figure out what the fuck they were doing. So I would look at like they participated in their own like genius curation of the lyrics. And I was like, okay, well, I definitely didn't get that from this fucking song. So it gave me the ability to talk about the song and how much I hated it. But I think with something like this that I knew I would enjoy, I just kind of wanted to be untainted. But the one thing I did look up was this song. And he specifically says these are his 4 a.m. thoughts. When it's just like that crash, like you're up all night partying. Everybody else who can't hang is gone. You inevitably wind up by yourself. And you're coming down, and these are all the thoughts that flood your mind in that 4 a.m. lull.
Yeah. That's kind of a great way to put it. I mean, I feel like maybe not everybody knows what that's like, but I feel like everybody knows that kind of frantic mindset where it's like you feel like you're really alone. You can't figure out what you are supposed to do to get out of it, but it weighs so heavy on you that you can't just like put it off till you figure it out. It's going to just consume you until you either, in his case, probably do more drugs or you get whatever it is figured out.
Yeah, totally.
It's just a very, it's like I said, a long song, but it's one of those ones where it's like, you don't realize how long it is because it's just so engrossing with the way he's kind of wrapping up this whole story. And then he goes right into Until I Bleed Out, which is basically like him giving up. He's like, all right, I've had enough. I don't have anything left to give. And it's time for this all to just be over, basically.
Yep. I think, yeah. And I mean, that's pretty much what you see is what you get on that one. It's the end of the album. He has nothing left to give us. He's, emotionally bled out. And then within the context of the story that's being told in the album, he's done. He's fried. And like we said, at some point, this will all start all over again and he'll hit all these beats again, ostensibly for years and years to come until, God forbid something tragic happens, or happily he figures his shit out. I don't know what a completely sober The Weeknd would sound like, but I'd love to find out if it brought him peace of mind.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, and who knows, like, I don't know how much of this he's even still experiencing. I don't know what kind of lifestyle he's leading at the present moment, or if these are things that he's, from his past that he's still drawing upon to, for inspiration to write songs. So I don't know if this was like last year or if this was 5 years ago and he's just writing about it now. I don't know. I
think this is largely him drawing from his past. So I guess like what I'm saying is more in the context of the album, like this. I hate to call him a character, but the protagonist version of The Weeknd, living that cycle over and over again. It seems like that's largely in the past. I think 2013 to 14 was when he was like pretty fried. He was just like destroying Vegas. So that's as far as I know. So I hope so. I hope he's,
Yeah, I mean, he's been out, when you think about it, it's kind of crazy to think about the fact he's been out since like really pretty popular since like 2011 or so. I mean, like that time period,
11,
maybe
12.
even 2010. But it's just like crazy how he still sounds like very fresh. Like this album still sounds very fresh, and not a lot of it sounds, a ton like his other stuff. It seems like he does progress through, as he gets older and kind of has these experiences, he has a different perspective. He doesn't, when he sings something like Starboy at that time, he was like really feeling himself, and now at this point in his life, he understands looking back at that. He's like, well, maybe I didn't make some very good decisions back then, and I think, I think he does a good job at, not beating you over the head with like, oh, I'm growing up, this is me maturing. I think he's just very good at being honest about how he feels. So that always comes through, that naturally as you get older, you're going to mature and look at things differently. And so naturally that bleeds into his music. And I think he just is a very good, overall very good songwriter, but also just the way he sings, the way he puts the songs together. Great entertainer. I mean, it's just a good album. Absolutely stream this one, I would say.
Yep, stream it. Do it.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Now we can talk about Taylor Swift Folklore. I'm going to say right off the bat, I didn't find a whole lot on this album that I would go back to. And really, I don't know if I'd go back to it actively or if I just wouldn't mind if I was subjected to it. Because... and I picked this one, and I will say the reason I picked this one is because obviously Taylor Swift is a massive, massive star. So there's people that she makes music for that completely relate to it, really benefits their lives. So that's the reason she's as popular as she is. And this album, came out three months ago or something like that. I mean, pretty recently, maybe even 2 months ago.
I think two. I think it was July, end of July.
Yeah, it hasn't been too long. And so I was like, maybe I'll give this a shot. There's got to be a reason she's so popular. Maybe I've only ever heard the really popular songs, and since I don't tend to go typically for like just straight up pop music, maybe I just didn't relate to those. Maybe if I get into an album, I'll understand, where everybody's coming from with this. And nope, I did not. I do not understand where everybody's coming from with this. I thought of this album is like a popcorn fart in a hurricane.
I called it a bread sandwich, so it's very similar.
Yeah,
it's just very bland.
Yeah, just I don't know. I guess in general, we'll touch on a couple songs that I'll definitely give credit where it's due on this one for ones that I thought she did a good job with. But overall, it's just the reason I love The Weeknd is because he's very honest about himself, about his toxic traits and how they ruin other people's lives too. He's constantly asking for forgiveness. Like he understands his role in the things that have gone wrong in his life. So I know we obviously didn't mean to do this, but these two albums are a great juxtaposition of each other about how someone views themselves in terms of the world. Because the way that I get the sense from Taylor Swift, and I may catch a ton of hate for this, I don't know. Tell me if I'm completely wrong about this. Actually, I don't care. It just seems like she just doesn't want to really acknowledge how much she might have a role in the things that have gone wrong. Like she touches on it, but I never feel like I'm getting complete and total honesty from her.
I could not agree more. I actually wrote down, she's the person that goes into a job interview, and when they say, what are your worst qualities? She goes, I think I care too much. Exactly. Like when she talks about her flaws, it's never, I internalized my mother's self-hatred, took it on myself, so now I can't have friendships with women because I don't trust them because I had bad female. Like, there's never any kind of introspection to that level, or like, if she was like, surprise, I'm racist or something like that. She can't own up to her truly bad qualities and her role in the demise of these relationships, professional and romantic, and the way that she's seen. Like she complains about being a commodity, but it's like, well, you're a plutocrat. So I'm not sure what you thought the alternative was. Like you could have been a Hayley Whitters level songwriter and hung around Nashville and like really stuck it out and tried to come up with something that was uniquely Taylor Swift. And what this feels like is something that's been prepackaged to reach the largest amount of people. And I got to give this caveat too. I don't want to just hate on Taylor Swift because she's Taylor Swift and I'm a man. Because it feels like the bro thing to do would be like, fucking Taylor Swift, that music's so fucking stupid, dude. Like we were talking about earlier, this kind of toxic masculinity where you can't be in touch. But I love Casey Musgraves, and I would argue that, if you go to one of her concerts, you're going to see a lot of 16-year-old girls and me. And that sounded way worse when it came out of my mouth than I meant for it to. However, the thing is, I don't just hate Taylor Swift because of who she is. I don't even hate her. I just didn't ever fuck with her. And really until this album. I'd heard, Shake It Off, all that other shit. And I'm like, I don't like this. This is like boring white woman music. It's whatever. But I never really sat through, and I will now say endured, an entire Taylor Swift album. And if this represents like her best effort and like as deep as she can go, I mean, God love you for trying, but you can't fucking drill for oil in a sandbox. And I don't think she has enough interesting things going on. I don't think she has, again, as a plutocrat, she has such a distance from what average people are dealing with that I just don't think she knows what to sing about that's compelling. Like jumping into the album, The Last Great American Dynasty, that is a song about the mansion that she bought in Rhode Island that used to belong to some woman who apparently married into oil money and then became like a crazy rich woman who like got into a dispute with her neighbor and dyed the dog's hair green. She makes this woman sound like a fucking asshole and then puts herself...
Well, I think with this one, sorry to jump in. I think with this one, it's like she's... it's like they come in. I think the woman has like her own bona fides. Like I think she's like an artist or something, but she's not... Yeah, she's not like... Yeah, so she's not a... but it's like she seems like she was almost like more of like kind of a pillar of the community from what I gathered, where it's like she had a mission that she was trying to do and people like looked at her funny and like talked shit about her because they felt like she was rocking the boat and stuff. But, where it seems like she had kind of a noble cause, like I feel like Taylor Swift had no problem comparing herself to somebody that has like a noble cause because she bought her mansion.
But in the worst aspects of it too, she didn't go like, this woman was, she never in the song goes, well, she was a patron of the arts and she did a lot of good in the community. She focused on like people thought she was trailer trash and she was new money. So they treated her poorly. And in response, she used her wealth to be an asshole back. Like Taylor Swift does not frame this woman. I think her name is like Rebecca Hargreaves or something like that. Does not frame this woman in a flattering light. And then compares herself to that behavior. And I'm like, what's your fucking point in this song? That you bought a mansion that was owned by, in your words, an asshole, and you're going to be an asshole to like trigger the haters? Who is this song for? Martin Shkreli? Like, I have no idea.
I mean, I wrote on my notes, I just wrote gross, 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 because I didn't understand. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it just shows her being pretty out of touch, like you were saying, with kind of what regular people are going through. And it really kind of struck me, I guess, and this just kind of dawned on me. I didn't write this down or anything, but she just treats music as an aesthetic rather than a medium.
Yes.
And it's just like, and I don't know if that makes a ton of sense. So hopefully, people can understand what I'm saying, where it's like, The Weeknd seems to treat things, Weeknd, like Casey Musgraves, Margot Price, like all these people that we've talked about already, treat music as a cathartic thing, as a way to get what they're feeling out, being like, maybe other people can relate to these feelings. And, we're going to, and it's not necessarily for the purpose of being clever, and they're very clever in how they deliver those things, but it's like, they're making sure that they're bringing you that raw emotion. They're doing it in their style, but they're giving you their raw emotion as it comes out of them, and it seems like when Taylor Swift makes music, and I honestly like all of those pop songs that I thought I didn't, I was like, I like all of those songs a lot more because at least it felt like there was kind of like a real personality to it, and it wasn't that she was just trying to, make, basically like the artwork you buy at Target, into music.
Yeah. The wooden sign that says breathe. Yeah. That's what this is. This is her foray into cottagecore and being like, oh, stuck at home during the pandemic, I'll do the home recording DIY secret project. And it's like, you want to know who actually can pull that off is Waxahachie, Katie Crutchfield, because she had nothing. She had no studio access, no Jack Antonoff. She just had the things that were happening in her life and a notebook and a bedroom. And those are the kind of people that should be making these introspective, stripped down, again, cottagecore, I guess as a genre, albums. I don't buy it with Taylor Swift. I don't buy it. I don't care if you like went to some Welsh cottage with no running water and electricity. That doesn't mean like anything about that experience is authentic. You still get to go back to your life as Taylor Swift. And all these songs reflect life as Taylor Swift, who's had it made in the fucking shade for years. And I get it. She's gone through some shit. The industry sucks. It sounds like people do nothing but try to tear you down. Fuck Scooter Braun. Fuck Scott Gorshowitz or whatever her fucking old manager's name was. I like the music of Kanye West, but fuck him for the way he's tormented her. Like, she has to put up with a lot of crap. I got to give her credit for handling it with aplomb. That being said,
I don't doubt.
No, go ahead.
I don't doubt one bit that she has to deal with some very real emotional stuff, just like anybody else does. And probably magnified, and intensified because of her position, that the whole stuff with Scooter Braun, like basically she can, holding her own music hostage, she's very much like has always written her own music, whether she, she has collaborators and stuff, but she's very much in control of all the music that she puts out. She might have once in a while, I think there's a few songs that other people have written for her, but it's just because they were so good that she's like, I want to do this song.
Yeah.
So I do give credit for her that she has been in charge of the things that she's done. And she does seem to take a, obviously great businesswoman. She's worth hundreds of millions of dollars now. So it's like she understands the business side of things. And I think that's where it kind of, and I think this one kind of really, I felt like she was almost really trying to hammer home, like I said, an aesthetic, like of the being stuck at home, like out in the middle of the woods, and all this stuff. And it's like, I just don't, you're telling me the same artist that came out with, like Shake It Off and the Red album, the 1989 album, and like Romeo and Juliet, back in the day. It's like, it just doesn't jive with me. And I understand people can grow and change and everything, but it just seems very inauthentic to me.
It feels like she hijacked, again, somebody else's movement, bedroom pop, dream pop. Not that this is a bedroom pop, dream pop sound, but that production style and that DIY ethic. It feels like she hijacked that because she would get accolades for it, because fucking douchebag music critics would sit there and be like, oh, it's really a change in direction. It's so stripped down. It's so bold. It's like telling a woman she's brave for not wearing makeup, like that kind of thing. It's like, you're evaluating these subjective decisions and calling her like, I don't even, it's just very,
well, just,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It could be just a very, like what you're saying. It's just something that somebody is just doing because they feel good doing it. And you're like, oh, well, you look kind of shitty, but like, you're really brave for doing that. I think that's the kind of sense you're getting. It's like where it's just better to just not say that. Just say that they look really good.
Well,
don't say like, you look really good. I love you without makeup. Like, you don't have to like add that thing to it,
Just, and I think the nicest thing you can do for people is be totally fucking honest. And it's hard to jive with her music because it's so manufactured. You can't get close to it. I'm sure the Swifties don't have that problem. And if you've seen any of the things they write on music forums or Genius or something like that, they are the biggest sycophants on the planet. Like diehard, like part integral to your identity Swifties.
Mm-hmm.
All I will say is you're allowed to like Taylor Swift, but the diehard Swifties that I've met and like taken on dates have been just insufferable because they place so much of their identity in like fall colors and cardigans and wine and kiss all the boys and let's go down to the holler. And I'm just like, you don't mean that any more than Taylor Swift does. So you're all full of, stop enabling each other to be full of shit. Taylor, look what you've done. Look what you made me do. Look what you've made me do.
Oh, nice call.
See what I did there?
I will. Yeah. I will say, I think it's going to be fair to give her a little bit of credit on a couple songs.
Mm-hmm.
So like right after The Last Great American Dynasty, the song Exile, the one she did with Justin Vernon from Bon Iver, yeah. I don't know how you're supposed to say it. I'm not sure. I think there was a thing about that and I never caught up to what the answer was. But this one I thought was a decent song. It's kind of a cool perspective, and I think she is good, like putting music together and like putting lyrics together. She's great at like organizing rhymes and everything like that. But it just seems like she's never giving us her full, like honest self almost, not the same way that we've had, all these other artists that we've talked about. I feel like there's just something where I feel like I'm being presented this by Taylor Swift rather than experiencing what she's experienced, and it's just a different, I don't know. I feel like the perspective that she puts on this song in particular, Exile, I feel like is one that I can certainly like kind of put myself into as well. The way that it's constructed, it's kind of that, just two ex-lovers talking to each other. I think the setting is that like they came back to like move out of the apartment or something like that and they saw each other, and it's just like what you would say in that situation. And I thought it was cool. I haven't really listened to anything that Justin Vernon does. I think I've heard a few of the bigger hits that Bon Iver has had, but not, I haven't gone deep into it, but I do kind of like what he brought to this as well.
Yeah, for me, it was the first one that didn't feel like her standing at an arm's length and going, well, what you see is what you get, so take it or leave it, which like the first couple songs definitely have that attitude. Like you were saying, it's not like, hey, I'm opening a part of myself up, and I'd like you to come on this journey with me, and you might like it and you might not, but I just have to share my truth, which was a hippie way of putting it. But that's kind of what you want an artist to do, is be like, hey, come with me. Not just like throw something at you and be like, do you want it or not? Which is what a lot of her fucking songs kind of feel like. And this was the first one for me. It was like pretty low key and musically simplistic. It really picked up for me at the bridge when it was all the crosstalk. It was the couple, because the whole thing is about how a couple can't communicate, and that's how their relationship fell apart. So when we get to the bridge and they're just like, you're not hearing me, that crosstalk over each other, it's very neatly done. It's very neatly reflected musically. So again, you have to give her credit for that. You have to give whoever put that together credit, because it was smartly done. So it didn't like set my world on fire, but it was like the first time I felt like she wasn't like hate fucking me with her songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's like in particular, you know, one of the lines, "You never gave a warning sign," you know, is what Justin Vernon sings. Then you hear her kind of a background vocal say, "I gave so many signs." So it really kind of expresses this miscommunication that they've always experienced, where, you know, he never thought there was anything wrong, and maybe she could have said something, or even if she did, he wasn't listening, you know, that there was something wrong, where they're past the point where they could have fixed it, because if there was something to be fixed, it should have been, you know, months ago or weeks ago or whenever it was that everything kind of fell apart. But it sounds like he was unwilling to listen, and she just kind of got exasperated and gave up on the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, and not even just in comparison to the other songs that I really just actively didn't like on this album, you know, where I would think this one's just better, so it seems good. Like, I think this is a good song in general. You know, I think this is a pretty strong effort, you know, as far as, you know, the hype that Taylor Swift gets. You know, if she did more things like this, I would absolutely 100% be all in with listening to her and wouldn't have probably a bad thing to say about her. It's just, I feel like a lot of it, like I was saying, feels like it's just made for the aesthetic, the like, let me sit on the couch on a rainy day with a nice warm cup of coffee or something like that, you know. And it's just like that kind of, well, that sounds nice, you know. It's just, I guess I want something a little deeper and a little more out of the music that I'm listening to, you know. And it's just, I feel like, especially when you compare it to, you know, kind of how like Margot Price will just like express just outright anger, you know, Casey Musgraves can express that just really kind of overall blanket of depressed kind of sadness that you can have, you know, or happiness, you know, they're so good. Or The Weeknd just like being completely out of control, you know. It's just like these folks that can just express these things so deeply, that you can feel them, you know, when you listen to it. It's just, I feel like this song, she does a great job with it, and then she doesn't do it in a lot of other places, you know. It's just, it seems like, I don't know. I wish she would, because clearly she's capable of some really good things.
Well, and to completely agree with you and follow up on that, and also keep Casey Musgraves in the mix, the next one, because rather than just talking about like how dog shit the dog shit ones are, like we'll hit some of the really bad ones, but I'd much rather approach with positivity, so it just doesn't look like, oh, of course they're shitting on Taylor Swift because it's not cool to like Taylor Swift. Like, that's not what this is at all. So I'd like to give her major compliments for the song 7. I really liked that a lot. It was very musically simple, but it had a lot of the same kind of motifs to me as "Oh What a World" by Casey Musgraves. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just like, a lot of the songs just had this droning, like 2 chords on the piano. Cha, blah, cha, blah. Like the first song was just claps, like Chainsmoker claps, and fucking that like 2-3 chords on the piano. And I was like, oh God, the whole album is this. I don't know if I'm going to make it. This might be the first tap. But with this, like, had some actual like production that went into it, and it just, she doesn't sound like she's full of shit. This is like an honest and compelling account. I would say she's got what I would like to call reverse Springsteen syndrome. Mm-hmm. He doesn't write about himself enough. Taylor Swift should write about herself far less, because when she writes a song like this, which is, I took it to be about like a friend or a cousin or someone she knew that she's reminiscing about, and how they had a rough upbringing. There's this line about your dad got mad again or something like that. But to me, it felt like she authentically captured the helplessness of a young woman who sees a friend suffering doesn't really know what the fuck to do or probably understand the gravity of it. She captured all of that really, really well with this song. So this is one.
Well, it's just an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think she, again, like I wish, and I put a mark down that I like that one as well. And I think it's because it gave you that, like a different feeling, you know, and clearly she is capable of writing a very good song, you know, and she does it. I would say there's probably a good, maybe handful of songs in this album that I think are pretty decent. You know, that being one of them. I like My Tears Ricochet, I thought was decent. That one's about the music industry and kind of how, when she expresses a real emotion like that one, it's basically like a diss track, you know, it's like, she's very angry, you know. I think when she expresses that real raw emotion, when she's clearly just like writing because she's mad, you know, it's like that's what I want to hear about. That's what I want to hear more of. You know, I don't want to, you know, I don't need to hear about these just completely, you know, she describes situations so like in such an on the surface way, without diving into really, you know, she kind of, I feel like she leaves it to you to infer what the emotions are there. Instead of, I think I like it better when you hear about the emotion so you can infer what the situation is, because then I think it becomes relatable. Because if you haven't been in those exact situations, you know, and experience those exact things, you know, you can infer what you should feel like, but if you can't, then it doesn't relate to you. But if you can infer, you know, if you go from emotion to the situation, go the other way, it's much easier to understand where they're coming from with that. And then you relate to the song and it adds that other level to it that I think makes you want to go back to it. And I think that just was missing on a lot of songs on this album. It just didn't have that emotion.
Well, two things there. I don't want to jump too far ahead on the album, but I will say Invisible String is one of the worst offenders of surface level horseshit that doesn't invite you to think critically about the song. It just gives you everything. But also another like really insidious thing that I marked down as with this one, I decided to see like what people were saying in their reviews about the songs, because I was like, what am I missing? Because so many of these are garbage. And people didn't like 7, and I'm like, it's objectively like the best song on this album. But then you look at something like what people are damn it, I lost my place in my notes. But it's just like a lot of people will reference other songs off of previous albums, particularly Red. Like a lot gets tied back to Red. So I marked down every time on a song it got compared to something she's already done. And let's see, it happens in Cardigan. It happens in The Last Great American Dynasty. It happens with Exile, the Bon Iver song. Doesn't happen again until August. And then This Is Me Trying, and then Illicit Affairs, and then Invisible Strings, and then Mad Woman, and then Peace. Like, it literally, all of these songs, somebody listened to them and went, that sounds exactly like the song she did on the last album, which I think is pretty fucking damning if you ask me, but what do I know? It
is, you know, I think, you know, that to me it can go either way. You know, I kind of look back, you know, it depends on if it was good on the last album. Like I'm always going to know a Springsteen song. You know what I mean? There's nothing he can do that doesn't sound like something he's already done.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad. I think in these contexts, yes, that's a bad thing. I think because they looked for her to be, maybe those songs weren't that great to start with. So they were like, well, she didn't do much with those there. So this is more of the same. Again, I haven't listened to, this is the most Taylor Swift I've ever actively intentionally listened to. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know about the comparisons to those other ones, but I did do like you and go through kind of afterwards and look at what other people have said, because again, I don't get it. I don't understand. Maybe her other albums have been incredible and I just have missed out on it. And this one just is a dud, but it seemed like a lot of people were saying really great things about all these songs. I'm like, where, like what? I don't understand. I guess pleasant enough to listen to, sure, but a lot of them sound the same. You know, they have that very subdued, again, that cottagecore sound. And thankfully I'm not that familiar with that genre of music. You know, I'm probably not going to like it very much, if this is an indication of what it is. But it's just seems like, I don't know, she could do so much more with the subject matter that she's got here. Especially on that song Invisible String, like you mentioned. what a great concept. Like when she says, what's it? Isn't it a pretty thing to imagine we're tied together by an invisible string?
Yeah.
Like really cool concept where it's like there's this thread, you know, that ties everybody together, you know, whether that's, you know, the Force if you're into Star Wars, or, you know, some sort of religion if you're whatever one that is. It's like that's this feeling that we're all connected in some way, that we're more than just a bag of bones and flesh. You know what I mean? You know, that idea is great, but then she makes the song and it just doesn't feel like there's great execution with that. And I felt like there's a lot of instances in this album where that was the case.
Well, yeah, and especially on Invisible Strings, she just gets caught up in just like spoon feeding you imagery that's not even that rich, and again has nothing to analyze. So she literally said, like one reviewer I wrote down, they literally said, this song is about falling in love with a boy in a teal shirt who worked at a yogurt shop. That is pretty much all there is to it. For a song that, if you look at the concept of the invisible string in like Eastern mythology, it is the idea, like destiny, kismet. There's someone else out there for you, your soulmate, and you are tied together by an invisible string. There is a lot you can do with a concept like that. And instead she's like, the red leaves were falling, the ball was brown, the boy said moo. Like it's just this like learning how to read horseshit, simplistic analysis of this idea. So you can't, that, and holy shit, musically, one of her like melodic lines was literally just like ba 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 ba, like two fucking notes and just this insane repetition. The like, when she misses in a big way, and she whiffed on that one.
Yeah, I mean, this album made me want to listen to that 1975 album again, because I was like, at least that one had, well, I mean, I was like, at least that one had like some upbeat songs on it, where it was like just more interesting to listen to if I wasn't going to be into it anyway, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I think for me the best song on the album was Epiphany. It's the one she wrote about her grandfather going to war.
Yep.
Because it just seemed like very much almost like that. You know, you'll obviously remember Dropkick Murphys. The Green Fields of France. Is that the name of the song?
Yeah, I think so.
The one that's how do you do, young Willie McBride.
Yep.
Starts out like that. You know, the really sad song about the soldier going to. You know, that's the feeling I got with this one. I was like, that is a good song. You know, that's a good. You know, one like respect to. Get to know Taylor a little better. You know, she's got a grandfather that was in World War II. You know, I get to get a little background on her and why she might be feeling some of the things she is, you know? And I think the way she puts it is like, it also dips into a little bit of a protest song about war, you know, where it's not only just telling his story, it's like telling him, you know, telling why he shouldn't have had to go, you know? So it's like got a little bit more substance to it. And I really thought that was something that, again, like we keep saying, was missing in a lot of other albums. But I think what she particularly, you know, it does deserve a shout out. You know, the first verse, keep your helmet, keep your life, son, just a flesh wound. Here's your rifle. Crawling up the beaches now, sir, I think he's bleeding out, and some things you just can't speak about. You know, and she ends that in some things you just can't speak about. That's the ending line to, you know, each verse. You know, because it's just like, well, you know, all these bad things happen, but it's like, we don't talk about those, you know, and it really kind of gives you this sense with talking about her family history. Maybe there's some things in her family that she wishes, you know, were a little more, you know, were addressed a little more, you know, that might have messed some people up that maybe they could have had some help with if they spoke up about it. You know, and I think that when she's saying that, it's just like, yeah, she found out about this stuff about her grandpa, but maybe she didn't find out directly from him. Like he wasn't forthcoming with that. And it's part of this, you know, maybe that's a reason why she can't get her emotions out, is because she's dealt with this. You know, maybe it's a little bit more of a window into who she is. And I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did not enjoy it as much, and I'm not going to like shit on her for it. It's just, I had hit such a point of diminishing returns on the very subdued, and we gotta with Taylor Swift by this point, that I like read the lyrics, I listened to the lyrics, and I was like, I appreciate this lyrically, but I just can't. It's, again, it feels like another arm's length thing. And then it like flips to that second verse about COVID, basically like someone's mother, someone's daughter is greeting you with through a plastic sheet or something. I'm fucking up the lyrics. It's not verbatim, But it was obviously about the pandemic and the loss of life and how we can prevent these things, and it's senseless. But it just felt like there wasn't like a ton of conceptual unity between the two verses. I would have liked to have heard more about one or the other. So like those are my criticisms of it, but it wasn't like, what a fucking shitty song. It's just
maybe I could change your mind a little bit on that, because I looked at it as she was like the consistency between the two verses is the emotion that someone feels there, where the world is all of a sudden hopeless. You know, this guy went to war, he's injured. You know, they're saying just a flesh wound. Here's your rifle. It's like, you're expendable, basically.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, and, you know, sir, I think he's bleeding out. And it's like, no, just don't worry about it. We don't talk about that. You know, and then with the same thing with the COVID stuff, you know, something med school did not cover: someone's daughter, someone's mother. Hold your hand through the plastic now. Doc, I think she's crashing out. Some things you just can't speak about. You know, it's that same thing where it's like, this terrible, terrible thing is happening, but it's, you know, we hear about it less and less and less, you know, and it's that emotion of all of a sudden you're thrust into this hopelessness. It's like, well, that you're losing this person that has been such an integral part of your life for what seems like no reason at all. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no reason they had to die like that, you know, that they had to leave you like that, you know, and that's the sense that I got. You know, I'm not going to blame you for not getting the same thing out of that, because, you know, to get to this point in the album and still pay enough attention to it and still get that, you know, it might have been the most Herculean effort I've ever put in doing anything, you know.
And hearing your analysis of it makes way more sense to me than actually listening to it through twice, because I just hit that point in the album and I'm like, she's just whiffed on some good concepts. She's whiffed on some dog shit concepts. I'm just super burnt out at this point. And it's like, it's a stupid thing, but it's like my brain just like didn't want to entertain her anymore. And I just think was like unable and unwilling to like hear this song beyond like, yeah, those are good lyrics. And then just kind of like give her that due and move on. Mm-hmm. So I take the point, and it's probably something I do need to listen to individually, not in the context of the full album. But I wouldn't mind, real quick, hopping back to actually give her a compliment on my end. I don't know how you felt about this one, but I'm going to give her the reverse compliment sandwich. So
let's hear it.
The mean thing I'll say first is she has got to have one of the most forgettable voices in pop music, because she sings and I'm just like, it could be over the loudspeaker in Target. Like, it's just so boring. Like, say what you want. Tom Waits' voice sounds like a piece of steak that got hit by a gravel truck, but he knows how to fucking work that thing. And she just has this like bland ass sound. And that's unfortunate, because on something like the song Illicit Affairs, I really liked the subject matter. I liked the imagery, like this idea of death by 1,000 cuts. It's this like clandestine cheating relationship you can't hope to maintain. And just every time, every little like, little, what am I trying to say? What's the word? Not indecency, little like indignity. Every little indignity that you suffer as you meet up in hotels and, you know, Arby's drive-thrus and stuff like that. Like, that's very evocative. But now the other half of the compliment, the reverse compliment sandwich, great idea, questionable execution, because it's almost like she's afraid to make a very ugly song. So she's talking about these very like gutterball things, but it's very clean and polished. It's like a 6-year-old detective talking about a gruesome murder. It just like does not hit the same. So I just, that's a problem with her too, is like when she gets something right, there's always kind of something missing. And I feel like the asshole, but I'm not the one putting out the product. So.
Yeah. And I think, you know, hopefully we've been fair enough with the credit that we've given the album, because I think we both had different songs that we brought to the table that we said we liked. Illicit Affairs, I like this one just fine. Was probably, you know, at least probably top 30% of the album for me as far as the songs that I liked. You know, again, good idea, but it just seems like she never gets any deeper than the surface. You know, I think you said it about the 1975 album. It's about as deep as a puddle.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, I don't know. It seems like she's got so much more to offer us as far as, you know, what the lyrics that she's putting out. Musically, I can really take it or leave it with anybody, really. It doesn't make a difference to me. If the lyrics are good, the music is going to be good as well. You know what I mean? For me, that's lyrics and story are such a huge integral part of why I listen to music, that if those are great, the background music doesn't necessarily have to be that great. So if she can get to a point where she's delivering more songs with some real emotional depth and like some real feeling, and like you said, something, an ugly song, something that's really, take the blame for something. Talk about how like you were that you really were the shitty one in this, and like how you really did something wrong. Or if somebody did something terrible to you, like don't just talk about, some clever lines about how you're going to beat them. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, talk about how much they really pissed you off and how much you wanted to like cut them, it's like, just get some, whatever emotion you want to do, like find one and give it to us. It's just like, I just feel like there's so much more that she has to offer here, and it doesn't land.
I mean, to that end, you could say the exact same thing about another one that I liked in concept, which was Mad Woman, which is this like kitchen sink revenge song. I took it as shots at Kanye and Kim Kardashian, shots at Scooter Braun and this other guy whose name I never get right. It's not Scott Bakula. I wrote it down.
Might as well be
Scott
like Scott McDowd Borchetta.
Scott Borchetta. Yeah. So it's like her ex-manager, this guy who's holding her music hostage, Kanye being a douche, Kim and the whole sting operation. Like, it's all this stuff that, again, she has every right to be pissed off about. She is right in pure moral theory about all of these transgressions that have been made about her. But she makes this song, and it's like she's half tranquilized singing about it. Where is your fucking fire? I need a Janis Joplin. I need an Alanis Morissette. I need you pissed off. I need you bringing the fucking smoke on this one. Because it's not even just like, oh, it's entertaining to see her get angry. Like, I want to see her express that emotion genuinely and not have it be like, I'll have the last laugh because I'll live successfully, tee-hee, wink.
Yeah.
Be mad and say, fuck you, douchebag, and everyone who looks like you. Like, I want to see angry, fiery, not pretty, not playing the belle of the ball Taylor Swift. Because she's got a good idea with this song, and she just half-asses it.
Mm-hmm. It's like when I think of, I don't know if you ever, in your dreams, like you ever get in a fight,
you can't land the punch?
In your dream, you can't land a punch, or like it feels like you're punching really, really softly. It's like you're throwing pillows, basically. And it just feels like when something like Mad Woman, it's like she's throwing pillows. It's like she's angry, but you gotta like these people don't deserve you taking it easy on them. And I feel like with songs like this, we understand you're angry and you have every right to be. Not having access to the music that you have created is bullshit. There is no two ways about that. The way that Scooter Braun has basically just come out and said, like, yeah, basically the label will fold if we don't have control of Taylor Swift's music. It's just like, yeah, buddy, maybe you should have come up with a better business or let her just buy Big Machine Records and you cash out. Maybe that works for you. It's like, figure something else out. But for him to have treated her like that, which is an all-time shitty way for someone to treat an artist, someone that's been your meal ticket. Like, who the fuck has ever heard of Big Machine Records other than, Taylor Swift? You know what I mean? Like, we would have never known about them. And it's just, she's every right to be angry, but it just seems like she's throwing pillows. It's like there's no bite to it, No
one else is going to play fair, so why should she? And I guess, like, for my concluding remarks on this, I mean, if you have more, obviously, but, like, I guess for me, it's just I can keep ranting about things I didn't like, but TLDR, I really want to be on her side. I really want to like her. She just makes it really fucking difficult because of how, I think, on the one hand, out of touch she is, and on the other hand, how afraid she is to really try anything new. Like, this is being hailed as a new, like an evolution of her sound, but I don't buy it. It's dressing your shit up in someone else's clothes, being like, I could be Hayley Withers, I could be Katie Crutchfield. Like, I don't buy it. I don't buy that it's an evolution for you. It's dress up. So I want to be on her side, but she's got to give me more than this. This is a skip for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Skip it for me as well. I wanted so bad to like this one, but it's just, I don't know. Maybe the next one she'll get it. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Definitely skip it, but we need to keep things moving here.
Yes.
We are running low on time, but we had what I think is a great idea. A super group. We were decided, we're like, if we were to put together our dream, if we get to heaven, you get to see a concert. What's that concert going to be? Who's going to play in that? So I think as far as the rules go for this, we kind of kept it very simple. Just 4-piece band, drums, vocals, guitar, and bass. And I went back and forth on a lot of these. I don't know how you were with this one.
Yeah, I had to kind of bat a couple different ones around. What I figured out was for the point of the exercise, assuming them all in their prime. Like that's just for me, and I don't care what you do necessarily, but for me, I assumed them all in their respective prime. So we're obviously like bending time and space and whatever to do this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I started with the concept of what kind of sound I wanted and then tried to build a super group around that. And the first one that I did was basically all of the original members of Toto minus Steve Lukather replaced by Prince. I was like, all right, that's not very interesting. But
I mean, they were kind of a super group to start with anyway, so.
Yeah, honestly, but yeah, so I went back and forth on a couple things, but I hammered it out. So,
yeah, when I looked at it, I went for versatility. I was like, if I get people that can play anything, then they could play me anything. Mm-hmm. So when I went with that, and I heard you mention somebody, and I was talking to you about this one earlier. I was like, I picked a few that I think Alex might also pick. But the ones that I wrote down, I was like, I have to pick these people because it's like, these are the ones that for me in these parts of the, what they do, like they're among the best, in that they're, like I said, among the most versatile. So I guess I'll start. Let's go instrument by instrument. So we're going to start with the drums.
Okay.
I went with Neil Peart from Rush because to me, it was like, he could probably play anything that anybody else could play. And then, also probably some stuff that other people can't play.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good pick. And I thought about him for sure. And then I went same vein in terms of somebody with a very distinct style, versatility, and a really interesting setup. And I'll tell you his drum setup, and maybe you can tell me who it is. Mm-hmm. He is a lefty who plays right-handed with his hi-hats on the left and his ride and his floor toms on the right. And his name is Stuart Copeland of The Police.
Oh, yes. Nice little jazzy fellow there.
I just like the fat backbeats and the syncopations that he does. Those little change-ups, like you listen to something like Message in a Bottle. He's just so good at these very subtle things that completely transform the song. So he's my pick.
Very
for drums.
good pick. Very good pick. I like that. Very good pick. I guess we'll keep it in the rhythm section. We'll go with bass next. Recent one for me, but I'm going to pick Thundercat.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I really, like I was saying when we talked about his album, I know a lot of bassists, a lot of great, there's Victor Wooten, Les Claypool, all these folks that are, top of the pops, top of their game with bass, but, I don't go and listen to them. I have gone back consistently and listened to this Thundercat album since we talked about it on the show. And it is, a very popular pick in this household right now whenever we put it on the speakers because it just goes, and the way that he plays bass, I just can think of him playing bass with Neil Peart playing the drums and the kind of rhythms that those two dudes could put together. Mm-hmm. To me, I was like, that just kind of lock and key, baby.
You guys got to listen to Drunk next, the Thundercat. I think that was 17 that came out. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, I'll listen to that one. We did pick 2-hour-long albums this week to listen to,
yeah.
So I think we both shot ourselves in the foot for listening to anything else.
Yeah, for sure.
This show. Yeah.
So for me with bass, this was actually the hardest one for me because at first I was like, maybe someone like Paul McCartney, and then I realized I don't think he's the most technically proficient bass. He's more of a persona. It's you're going to see Paul McCartney. You're not watching You're not going to see him play bass in a supergroup.
Yeah.
So I was then thinking more about trying to compliment Stuart Copeland on the drums because he's the first person I picked. So if you're trying to compliment him on the drums, and my first thought was somebody who's like really dexterous, like Joe Dart, who plays the bass for Wolfpack. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, I want a Les Claypool type, but I'll take like a Les Claypool disciple, which is Joe Dart. But then I really thought about supergroup, and with all the other names on the marquee, so it's Stuart Copeland, my other two people, and Joe Dart. They're like, Joe Dirt's playing in a tribute band? So I decided to just, in Hollywood, they say, if you want a Seth Green type, just go for Seth Green. So I went for Les Claypool.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I'm wagering that's high risk, high reward pick because he and Stuart Copeland will either make sweet magic together or it'll be a fucking bus crash. And I can't wait to find out which.
Well, it would be a bus crash strictly because of Les Claypool. I can tell you that. I feel like Stuart Copeland would be just fine with playing with anybody. But yeah, Les Claypool is a little bit of a wild card. I have been playing tons of the new Tony Hawk Pro Skater game that came out. They remastered 1 and 2. And Jerry Was a Race Car Driver by Primus is on there. So that bass line right at the beginning, I hear it constantly. It's just, he was such a good bass player. Still is. I mean, obviously, but
crazy.
Man, he was breaking down some barriers back then. Now I guess, which would you rather do next? Which one is going to be your like big marquee pick? Is it going to be vocals or guitar?
My vocals.
Which one are you most proud of, I guess, for your pick?
I was the most proud of Stuart Copeland, so really it's a toss-up at this point.
Okay, well we'll go with guitar.
Okay,
actually, you know what? We'll go with vocals first because I think my guitar one I'm most proud of. So vocals, I thought about this one. I was like, again, versatility. Like, who's going to be able to do the most? So I went down, my natural progression. Thought of Meatloaf. But I was like, I don't know if that's necessarily always the kind of music that I'm going to want to listen to because it's very specific type of music, very, very operatic. And I just don't know how well that fits. And then I thought of, Claudio from Coheed and Cambria because he's got a very distinctive voice, but I was like, I don't know how well he'd do with this type of music. So I settled on Axl Rose.
Ooh.
Yeah, because I went back and looked this up. He has the largest vocal register of anybody, in popular, in recorded music, which means from his lowest note to, you could tell more about this, from his lowest note to his highest note, he's got the biggest range of anybody.
Wow.
And when you listen to I know, blows your mind, right? But it's when you listen to Guns N' Roses, like he can sing really, really low down here, and then his wail is really high pitched as well. I don't know what exact notes they are, but from bottom to top, he's got the biggest range of anybody. So I picked him because he is very versatile. If you've listened to some of the deeper cuts, get past like the Welcome to the Jungle and Paradise City, Sweet Child of Mine, I think is a much better indication of his vocal talent, but he is a very, very talented vocalist and takes it very seriously. So I think playing with Thundercat and Neil Peart, I think he's going to take that pretty seriously.
That's such an interesting combination. Also, like, I'm the insane one. You would think I would be the one that was like, we'll have chocolate and spaghetti for dinner. But I picked like a lot of people, Les Claypool maybe notwithstanding, that kind of fit into an aesthetic together because, again, I went top down from the sound that I want. And I kind of want, it's funny you say Meatloaf because I briefly considered him for lead singer. And that is what we're doing right now, right? We're saving guitar for last. Mm-hmm. I said brain fart.
Yeah.
But I considered him for vocalist because I want someone that is versatile. I think his voice is a little too distinct, and he kind of really has two volumes: fucking loud and then loud pretending to be a whisper when he's doing his thing. Like, even then, it's like very out of control. I wanted someone with a little more control, a little more versatility, big range, big sound, the ability, if this is like a rock ballad, to just shriek to the fucking rafters, and can go down and do something tender and low in the register if there's some kind of ballad or some kind of lower song like that. And I decided I wanted me a woman to front this band. So I picked Ann Wilson from Heart.
Oh, baby, what a pick. That is, Oh man, that's a good one.
Imagine Stuart's
She's
just
great.
back there doing that reggae punk kind of shit, and she's just
Oh yeah.
wailing on it.
Oh, what a pick. What a pick. Congratulations.
Why, thank you.
That one, that took me by surprise. That took me aback.
Well, there you
That
go.
was beautiful. Yeah, Hart is so good. She is so good.
Sneaky.
When she did they were doing the Kennedy Center honors for Led Zeppelin, and she sang "Stairway to Heaven." Whew, man, oh man, was that good?
She's still got it, man. Like, she's obviously taken a step down in age as she's gotten older, but fuck, man, she can still do it. She sang the anthem for the Seahawks like 2-3 years ago.
She can still sing as well as she ever did. It's just it's a little bit lower register.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens to everybody. If your voice is your instrument, you're going to stretch those vocal cords out to a point where it's like your register is going to lower a little bit. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
The fatter and the
at,
thicker they get, the more low your sound becomes.
Yeah. I mean, look at like Michael Jackson. I mean, when he was a little kid, his voice was as high pitched and pure and nice as anything. And then as he got older, it was still like high pitched and nice, but clearly much lower, you know? So it just happens, but man, what a pick. Yeah. She's a great singer. I would absolutely suggest anybody go watch that Kennedy Center honors performance she did. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were in tears in the balcony watching her sing that song, because I think, Robert Plant was like, cause she sang it at that point, she could hit all the notes that he did back then, cause her register dropped down to what his used to be. And so I felt like it was like he was hearing the song as he would have been able to sing it, back in the day. So I think it was just like, he was looking back in time at himself a little bit with that. It was just kind of a really cool moment to see from two bands that I like have grown up listening to and pretty much idolizing, very, very good. So the big one, guitar. This one is probably the most likely, I think, to be an overlap between the two of us, because I picked Prince for this one. It was between him and Stevie Ray Vaughan, because just for me, those are the two greatest guitar players to ever live. I mean, obviously I'm not going to argue with anybody if they say like Eric Clapton or, Jimi Hendrix or, Jimmy Page, any of these other guys. I'm not going to really argue with that. But for me, Prince and Stevie Ray Vaughan are top of the pops. And I think Prince just edges him out a little bit. In my mind, Prince was our greatest living guitarist when he was alive. So for me, like that, just the versatility with him, Thundercat and Neil Peart putting down the music, the things they could do just blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, that's hot. That's hot. And I got to say, as a joke, like I said, considered just like put Prince and Toto and it'd be the perfect band. And I thought about maybe I'll cheat and I'll have him be the vocalist and the guitar player and just have it be a trio. But I really thought about it, and I love his fucking guitar playing. And I guess if he's the number one overall draft pick, if I'm putting myself a little farther down in the draft, I want someone who's obviously first round pick, no slouch. And I think you'll agree when I tell you who it is. And why I picked him was his ability to make his guitar sound so fucking soulful and vocal. The way he bends the strings, he gives his guitar this very like human vocal sound. It's so fucking alive. And I think it would color in, if Les Claypool goes off the fucking cliff, it kind of colors in all his weirdness. It fits in well with anything that Stuart Copeland's doing on the drums. And then Ann Wilson would have no fucking problem fitting her voice in with this aesthetic for his guitar. I picked David Gilmour from Pink Floyd.
Oh, baby. He was on my list because I love, that's a good pick too, man.
I figured he might be on your list.
Yeah, that's a good pick too. I mean, that's just some of the things that he's done with it. I mean, that Comfortably Numb solo, I mean, that's the number one thing that people always pick for him, but it's because it's been rated like one of the top 3 greatest guitar solos of all time. I mean, that guy was a genius.
Oh man, the fucking guitar solo in Dogs, like tie me down, hold me the fuck down.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen the Live at Pompeii concert.
I'm
they
friends
did.
with Tanner,
Yeah,
of course I've seen it.
Yeah, I've got that on DVD. I don't know when I ended up getting that at some point, but just watching him, they do an interview in a diner or something like that, and they say like, "Oh, well, what drugs were you on when you were doing all this?" And young David Gilmour goes, "We don't take drugs. What are you talking about?" And it's just like, clearly they do, but he's like, I'm not telling you how I come up with this stuff, and they're famously, like, Pink Floyd just famously pretty private as far as like their personal lives and everything, and especially how they create the music. They've just been so distinctive for so many years. Oh man, what a good pick.
Yeah, they're little cheeky boys.
Yeah.
So to recap, who were your foursome again?
So on drums, Neil Peart from Rush. On vocals, Axl Rose. On guitar, Prince. And bass is Thundercat. And the name of the game is Versatility.
That is a fucking murderer's row. I also realized we should have come up with band names.
Ooh.
And I totally didn't do that. I was going to text you like, we got to come up with names for these. And that's a big whiff on our part.
I think the Thunder Prince of the Rose Rush.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
That sounds very Irish. The Thunder Prince of the Rose Rush.
Well, they're versatile. They could play Irish music.
That's true. They could.
I'll bet you Prince could get some like accordion and bagpipe sounds out of his guitar.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that'd be
it.
Yeah, so mine, David Gilmour on guitar, Stuart Copeland on the drums, Les Claypool on the bass, and Ann Wilson on vocals. And we are called Old But Not Dead Yet.
Oh, that's beautiful.
They're all still alive.
Those are two bands that I would love to see for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I love that we went with two completely opposite approaches too. And again, you definitely took what I honestly thought my original approach would be, and then I uncharacteristically became very academic about this.
Well, I think you came up with an idea of exactly the music that you'd want to hear. And I couldn't come up with that. So I was like, well, who do I know? What musicians could I pick that would be able to play anything that I'd want to hear regardless of who it is? So, those, I think those four that I picked, I would be like, yeah, they'd be absolutely fine. Because I mean, I feel like they also, the way that Neil Peart always complimented Rush, even though he was easily the most prodigiously talented person in that band, that's certainly saying something when you're talking about the other two being Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson. The way he just is complimentary to the music was still being so dynamic. Thundercat, the same thing. And then you get that showmanship with Prince, but with the talent to back it up. And then Axl Rose can literally sing anything. So it's for me, they would be able to create any type of music that I'd want to listen to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's fucking great. Yeah. So let's make it happen.
And we would love to hear your supergroups. So maybe there's instruments we didn't cover in here. We wanted to keep it pretty simple. We didn't mention any keys. You could certainly talk about, if there's other instrumentations, if you have a harmonica player you love, I don't know who other than John Popper might be on that list. Maybe Bruce or Bob Dylan, not sure. But yeah, let us know who you think might be on the list. Tell us why we might be wrong about our list. You can find us on Instagram at Out on That Line, and on Twitter, Out on That Line 1. We have a link tree up on both. That'll get you our SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, Spotify links. We release every Monday, as you know, so just look for us then. We'll be letting you know what we're going to, we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to still get those album submissions in so we can review those for you. And yeah, I think we're just having a good time doing this so far. I think this one's getting pretty long. So I'll give you a platform for any final thoughts this week.
I think that's it for me. I'm just going to tell everybody for another week, keep it greasy.
Excellent. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.